Let's go. The future of dungeons in World of Warcraft. September 4th? That means it was yesterday. Nice. Am I weird for Cthulhu Eternal Nights being one of my favorite dungeons? Yes. I only really started playing endgame content in 7.2, so was only introduced to this dungeon at the same time as the others, and I've always really enjoyed it. Oh fuck, yeah, it was actually released in 7.2. You're weird. You're weird, but it's fine. What was Bad Mop dungeon? I don't remember. What else was shit? Is there what was his name? Argus. Argus. a... Yes, but he is weird. Man, that was a massive reply. Holy shit. CoEN's with the worst dungeon. It's like it what started the downfall of all dungeons since.
Plus dungeon pool, and also mythic plus gear rewards. Because how many of us want to see some sort of M plus set or something, or just, you know...
Just have a dungeon set. For fuck's sake, just have a dungeon set that only works in dungeons or only benefits in dungeons. When there's like 4+ mobs on you, you get certain buffs. Just do that so it doesn't work in raid.
A way to get a more cool visual for our character in M+, which maybe for Blizzard is something that they will achieve via having an equivalent of the creation catalyst, which then of course will give Mythic Plus players access to the visual rewards from raiding. But anyway, on the dungeon pool, he said they ran into a problem in Legion when they started to add entirely new dungeons to a pool of dungeons people had already mastered, yes, right? Because you bring Cathedral in.
That's not like Cathedral was bad. But yeah.
And you make Cathedral, in your opinion, pretty much as hard as any other dungeon.
But they didn't. But they didn't. They made it way harder and way less fun and way bigger and more tight on this fucking timer. Like, no.
But the problem is, people have got the same expectations to run it at the same keystone level, 2 dungeons they've already mastered, so they go in, they get their asses kicked, and it feels super overpowered.
Yeah, because absolutely no one ever looked into the big room with the tree in it and thought, maybe...
Yeah.
What they're talking about literally was like the first 1 or 2 runs that you understand the mistakes you make. Like the whole tree room, that stopped happening, that people went into the tree room like idiots. That stopped happening after the first week of it being released. I don't know what these guys are talking about. It's not that hard to learn the dungeon. The dungeon is extremely simple. It just sucked ass.
Maybe I will learn where the mobs in this room are. Or perhaps...
There's no need to learn. There are flowers on the floor. You can see where they are.
Maybe I will just run in face first as a DPS and then complete.
He's clearly traumatized by some DPS players, but like this almost never happened in high keys. I don't know what kind of idiots he was running with. This almost never happened. After the first week, unless the tank was clueless and would take forever to move his ass, this would never happen. And I was tanking usually, so never happened.
You ruined the key. Thanks, DPS players. You're all very good at the game.
Straight up, unless it's bolstering week, if the tank stays until the last mob dies, it's a shit tank. I'll tell you that right now. As soon as you see the mobs are about to die, you shouldn't be there as a tank. You should be going for the next pull, unless someone's asking you not to. It's a timed fucking dungeon. You're not standing still, looking at all the mobs dying and then moving forward. Hell no. You go and you bring more mobs.
Honestly,
sorry, you're all extremely attentive.
I thought Cathedral was awesome.
There were...
Well, he also thought lower Kara and upper Kara is awesome. All the keys that no one wants to do ever, yeah.
Couple parts of it I didn't like mechanically, but ultimately I also hated how the spiders moved. But beyond that, I thought it was very nice. The little...
Again, story-wise, it's a great dungeon. Mythic Plus, it's a dog shit dungeon.
The fighting with the was really cool.
Yeah, so...
That said, Seat of the Triumvirate can stay fucked off.
It was not a fun dungeon in my view.
There were some parts that were nice, but...
The Seat and Cathedral share too many similarities between how they work. It just did. Both were trash.
Cooler, like, towards the end.
Yeah,
but,
well, yeah.
Trash I didn't like.
Yeah, no. The routing of that being open was pretty nice, though.
Yeah, you like the trash in CoEN? The fucking patrol that if you locked out, they're doing the patrol where you can skip them. Like, if you kill the first packs fast enough, the patrol is... Oh, by the way, I completely forgot. The fucking first area of CoEN is also kind of... It's not hard, but it's also a pain in the ass. Especially with the knockback fucking bats.
People are very pro big open routable dungeons. But I think that's just because for a certain...
No. Plaguefall is one of the most hated dungeons in Shadowlands. That's a more open dungeon compared to others. Meanwhile, Blackrook Hold was a completely closed straight line dungeons. It had like one path just at the beginning, which isn't really a choice because you have the same mobs, just they appear in different order. Blackrook Hold was one of the most favorite dungeons during Legion. Same with Maw, because it was fast.
Certain slice of the Mythic Plus player base, and it's totally fair to them. Yeah. That is a really cool challenge, working out the routing.
Yeah, it's weird because I liked that then.
It's not a challenge. It's a challenge for the first week. It's not a challenge to work out routing. You know exactly what you need to do. In CoEN, honestly, once you go up the stairs after the first pack, before the tree boss, the best route you can take is managing to skip the 2-man patrol there. If you don't skip them, your run is kind of fucked. Alright, so you hopefully they're in a good location where you can sap them. They stop there, and then you can walk past them. That's really it. And the patrol after the tree boss.
I like it in...
There's way too much percentage in CoEN that like you don't really need to kill the patrols for the most part.
So there's Gambit. But I don't like it in Hall of Atonement. I don't know why. I think Hall of Atonement is a bit big. But then I obviously didn't do it in M+, but I really liked when I did the Ruby Life Pools, the Dragonflight dungeon, and it's just fucking Corridor City. It's just kind of like not as narrow and not as corridor as Final Fantasy 13 or Ockendune, but kind of getting those vibes of you can't do this dungeon wrong.
Yeah.
Which just means you just go in, you rack the place, and it's done. And I enjoy that as like one of the possibilities for Mythic Plus Dungeon.
Yeah, because it's simple, it's to the point, and it's fun. And there's no like random ass patrols coming out of like left field where you fuck up and then you're punished with the whole key going to shit. Yeah, straightforward is usually better for timed shit. Yeah.
Because you just go, wait.
Not saying all the time. Not saying all the time because it gets boring. But like usually the straightforward ones are the ones people would go for to farm, or like, you know, if you had to farm artifact power, you would go to a straightforward dungeon where less shit can go wrong.
I don't have to think about what I'm pulling.
Yeah.
I just get to pull the mobs and press, maybe press Divine Tool. Let's go.
Yep.
Yeah. Now then, for the dungeon pool in the new expansion, right? In case you're not aware, the way that they are doing it is there's 8 new dungeons in this expansion, but Season 1 of M+ is going to be 4 of those dungeons plus 4 sort of, Shadowlands Season 4 style older dungeons added to the Mythic Plus system. Season 2 is going to be the other 4 Dragonflight dungeons plus 4 other older dungeons. Beyond that point, well, they will certainly revisit fan favorites from the original 8 Dragonflight dungeons while continuing to rotate through cool legacy ones. Basically, some of what was brought up there is the idea of like, you know, it's Season 1, you really love a dungeon and then you feel disappointed that it's gone in Season 2. Ian was basically saying, look, we probably are just going to do the first 4 in Season 1, the second 4 in Season 2, but he said that beyond that they'll revisit the fan favorites. It's certainly the thing where I'll say, having really enjoyed Season...
First of all, I think that's a great idea because that would make something more interesting for the second season. A lot of people quit like during second season because they're kind of like, there's nothing new. It's just farming the same old dungeons, and now there's a new raid. If the raid can't keep you there, like you're kind of done with the expansion. So it is a really good thing that they're doing this and mixing the dungeon stuff, and also they would give you long forgotten dungeons that people enjoyed as Mythic Plus. I think that's a fantastic idea overall. I don't think it's enough, but it's a good start.
4, enjoying it being a nice fresh pool, because I didn't do any Tazavesh in the previous season. I just really appreciate it. I think it's really fun. So, you know, for me, I guess where... And you know what, fuck it, I really... As much as Grimrail can have some camera problems, and there are some weeks that make Grimrail really nice, and players knowing exactly what to do with the resources in the second boss fight is, of course, really nice. But
please learn the dungeon mechanics. It doesn't take very long.
He's talking about is Grimrail the train one with the guy with the machine gun later?
I think it's fun.
Yeah,
and even heading back to Iron Docks is fun. Like, if you were to tell me that it'd say Ockendune, I'll be really fucking sadistic. I'd be a real sadistic bastard. If you were to tell me that, I don't know, Season 3 was going to be whatever, plus
Skyreach.
Shadow Moon Burial Grounds
SPG.
and Skyreach,
Oh, that'd be crispy.
I would love that. That's a dream come true, please.
Like,
I wouldn't mind that. Yeah, I think almost all the WoD dungeons were fine overall. Trying to think of like one that I really hated. Can't think of one.
can't wait for people to not.
People will seethe so hard at Spires, which you know is the point. I said seethe after all.
Why? Spires was not hard though. Trash, maybe, but actually, yeah, Spires I can see being a problem with the wind platforms. Those can be.
It would be funny, and also man, Spires are God, that's such a cool dungeon. I love the WoD dungeons.
Yeah, sure.
But anyway, my point basically is, Everbloom, final boss, Tyrannical, let's go. Yeah, I like this.
Honestly, yeah, the best thing you can do for Skyreach is probably bring a Demon Hunter to jump over the wall, attack the guy who's making the wind, and run back towards the group, and then everyone can avoid getting hit by owls and shit.
New style of M+, I really do.
Yeah.
I'm kind of looking forward to it. Now, on that, let's talk about gear rewards. So, Ian says, if M+ is too rewarding, rating's dead. And, I remember as...
But what do you mean if in?
Yeah, like, I remember, like, DMing Mike, and one of the things he was frustrated with is just like, my best gear comes from a fucking dungeon I ran.
Yeah,
and that can feel a little bit shitty. I suspect that now that I'm enjoying this type of content a lot more, perhaps I'm just enjoying my role a lot more. Maybe I'll be okay doing a bit of both. But yeah, there are times where raiding just does not feel particularly rewarding compared to some other ways of getting gear in the game. Yep. I think
it's too much downtime. Too much downtime.
Yeah. So he recognizes that for normal and heroic guilds right now, there is a tension between raiding and M+ rewards.
Also, it's rewards per hour, not necessarily rewards. The amount of time it takes to do a heroic boss, especially during prog, is way too long. Not because of the boss, because of how often you even get to the boss. If you wipe, didn't have a B-res, even if you had a B-res, it's resurrecting everyone, it's rebuffing, refeeding, all that shit. It's way too long. It's like, it's not go. In a Mythic Plus, even if you wipe, you go right back into it. You die, you fucking run back into the fight. Right? Or it's like worst case, like everyone wipes. You wait for the tank and the heal to resurrect, and then you go into the fight. Meanwhile, in a raid, it's like takes forever. There's a reason like raids require like fucking 20-minute, 30-minute breaks. Well, usually 15, but yeah, during, because it's fucking exhausting. You're not even fighting the boss most of the time. It's fucked up.
If a heroic guild...
All they have to do is reduce the downtime during raid runs and probably double the rewards in raids, and you solve that problem for Mythic Plus.
...is progressing over the course of a season with half of their roster running plus 15s, and they don't need a bunch of loot anymore, and then that creates divisions in a guild, right? Because, say, the DPS...
But then they get AOTC and they stop raiding. Yeah, like, what's the problem? Are you actually doing... If you're doing heroic raid for gear while Mythic is available, you're an idiot. Straight up. If there's Mythic raid, you're not doing heroic for gear. Why would you? Even if there was no Mythic Plus, right? You're not running heroic runs for gear. Okay, you're running to get your AOTC. I don't see why you would run heroic for gear if there's a Mythic difficulty available. The first 3 bosses on the Mythic difficulty are substantially easier than the heroic anything, really. Then, like, the last part of a heroic raid is substantially harder than the first 3 bosses of a Mythic raid. By far.
Player who is doing their M+ is going to excel. So Ian said that on this broad topic, there's nothing to announce, but they want to increase the baseline difficulty of M+ so that there is more parity between dungeons, raid, and PvP.
The problem is the reward per hour, not the difficulty, man. people who can do Mythic plus 15s at that point will also still not do Heroic.
Quite interesting, because I suppose when we talk about, he says, at the same time, allow Mythic Plus players to reach the top of the mountain.
I don't agree with that.
Whether there's some level you clear in your Great Vault that gives Mythic and boss quality loot, they'd like to make them truly equal in that sense.
Yeah.
And he recognizes that.
The only way to make it equal, as far as like item level goes, is have specific sets for dungeons, specific sets for raids.
Kind of M+, there's absolutely every bit as much skill goes into pushing the reach.
Sithis91, 100% agree. Only played Season 1 of Shadowlands and the gearing's so fucking miserable.
Really high key, so they should be rewarded equally. And I think this is kind of interesting because one of the things we've said, Matt, for the longest time is that it is easier for 5 people to just do a plus 15 to get that in their vault than it is to do whatever in heroic mode.
Yeah, and that's been a problem for problems in Legion.
If they were going to notch that up, because right now, if you're a Mythic Plus player and you're really pushing yourself, you are so beyond where the game stops giving you more gear.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if they were...
I don't know why plus 20 doesn't have cosmetic rewards, and then plus 25 would have its own cosmetic rewards. Like if you do all dungeons at plus 20, you get a cosmetic reward. If you do all dungeons at plus 25, you get a cosmetic reward. Like some really cool fucking sets.
To just pull that back a bit, right? So that maybe...
And that thing is, this will also make them a timed reward. Because unless those dungeons are out, you're not gonna get to do them.
A Mythic 15 feels like what a Mythic 22 does now.
Yeah.
Then maybe those things could line up and make a bit more sense, so that for us average raiders, it maybe it just doesn't feel like M+ can absolutely smoke raiding gear.
Yeah,
Yes, it does. What do you mean? It always feels like it can, and it is. Just the vault smokes the raiding gear. How many times I had to replace some mythic raiding gear with a vault item because just like the secondary stats were better. It happened multiple times. Of course it smokes raiding gear. All except like the last 2, but honestly, if you kill the last 2 bosses that drop a high item level, then who cares what your item level is? You're done. You finished the game.
there's a whole awkward thing there with how like the format is inherently different. So it's like it would have to be way, 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 way harder. But then there's also, this is kind of interesting, right? Where the way dungeon design works versus raid design is, I think there's a lot more room for disparity in skill levels and how that impacts. Because there's so many ways that dungeon design will just kill you if you've got like 3 players who won't interrupt. But raids are very rarely like that, especially on like normal and a little bit on...
This guy has definitely not done mythic raiding. What's the name of the council fight in Castle Nathria? On mythic? If you miss an interrupt on the bitch, that's pretty much a wipe. And she does it like every so often.
On heroic, where you can kind of power through, especially with a big enough group size. If you bring we bring 30 players to heroic, you can bring like 5 morons and be fine. Whereas like you can't do that with...
But you can't do that in Mythic Raid. And Mythic plus 15s give you Mythic Raid gear in your vault.
And plus,
yeah,
you bring 2 morons and it's going to be a nightmare. And there's so many...
What do you mean? That's a regular Mythic plus run. You bring 2 morons all the time.
The difference between... Like, the difference between having a good player at X gear and a bad player at X gear is going to be way more exacerbated in what your max key is versus what your max raid clearance is. And that's a thing where it's very difficult to like reconcile, because they are 2 different forms of combat. Sorry, 2 different forms of combat and content, and they're put together in the same box. Alright, well, there are massive inherent differences in like the very core moment-to-moment design that it's why I like dungeons more a lot of the time. But also I like raiding in a very specific circumstance. But I like dungeons generally more because it's just there's a little bit of more general activity there. It's like it's the exact opposite in FF, where dungeons are tremendously boring a lot of the time. But it's like that thing where I think that's just 2 different types of combat or content. Getting them to feel the same is going to be a lot of tuning, and that's going to have downsides, because if people are used to doing, like, say, New Season Day, and they've got heroic gear, or they've got like plus 15 gear from the last time, and they go into plus 10, and they get their heads kicked in, they're not going to think, oh, I guess the developers have moved the goalposts in a way that makes sense because I never raided, but I did hear that M+ was easier. They're going to rage and be annoyed and feel like they're being punished for no good reason.
The thing is, even if they make it easier, M+ would still be easier. Sorry, even if they make M+ harder, it will still be easier. Not because of the game, because like you don't have to deal with as many idiots wiping you.
So that's going to be like a difficult thing for them to work out, I think.
So it's easier to do an M+ 18 without dying than it is to do a heroic raid. Almost any boss.
And I'm sure they're aware of this. Basically, it's this problem of the game's the way it is. How do you change it?
Yeah, player perceptions. I guess the only time where you can make such a big change is a new expansion. Even at that, if a 10 literally isn't tuned the way that a 10 was, but a player's expectations aren't calibrated, you're going to have issues.
Yeah,
so
if it's a completely new dungeon set, like a new expansion, a plus 10 would always feel harder than a plus 10 from the previous expansion. It's just normal. That's how it is. Like, it's not a big deal, and people will get used to it and they will move on. No one's going to be like, oh, this Mythic plus 10 feels harder than the Mythic plus 15 I did last week. Yeah, no shit. You don't have gear. It's a new expansion. It's a new dungeon. There's routes. There's all this. There's mechanics. Yeah, it's going to take a bit of calibration, but that's not... like, unless they make a plus 10 feel like a plus 20, which is like completely outrageous because no one will have the gear for it. It's like...
It'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Because it's like the same as like walking into a normal and it's got as full heroic mechanics. And you're like, wait, I've got one bad player and they're wiping? Well, wiping us what?
Think about our experience in Sepulchre, right? We were really enjoying Sepulchre. We went into Sepulchre normal mode, but we were under-geared because we did not farm or by any means...
Because we didn't do M+.
...do Sanctum stuff. We also didn't do M+. And we fucking love normal. Now, meanwhile, of course, you have the Asmongold video of everyone just wiping and it being a tremendous disaster. We have people, you know, all talking about how Sepulchre are very hard, not... but we're having a blast because the difficulty felt good to us and it was punishing, and you know, the going into Anduin's sword felt really good because it was pretty damn close every time.
Well, the mentality for approaching normal was very different. Approaching normal from Asmongold mentality is normal is easy. It's a cakewalk. It's a story mode. It shouldn't be hard. Just go there, see the bosses, have some laughs, and move on. Bellular's mentality was we're going to normal as prog. Good fuck, man. Progging on normal, holy fuck, you know? So yeah, the mentality of like approaching the content was very different. It's like me, first time reaching a plus 10, I don't expect to clear it if I'm way under gear. I'm like, oh shit, I made it to plus 10, that's cool. Like first time I got a plus 15, I made an alt paladin, was like an alliance paladin on a different server, and I did plus 15s being like 80 item levels under gear, and I was completely fine as a prot paladin for some reason, I don't know. And like I think it was during Shadowlands. Basically I did the mythic plus 15 at like 178 gear or 198 or some shit like that. Pretty sure it was like 170 item level, total item level. Just like, wow, you know, it's like, that felt good. I didn't expect to do that, but it felt good because my expectation was low. If I do a plus 15 on a fully stacked paladin, red prot paladin, and like we keep wiping, yeah, I'm not having a good time.
But we succeeded every time once we got our mechanics down. And then Blizzard evidently after that nerfed it to the point of obviously what they thought a normal should be, which I guess means the normal that we were doing was almost like a semi-heroic. Bit weird.
Yeah.
Bit weird. But hey, such as Sepulchre.
Yeah, they have to. I feel like they're trying to experiment with that a little bit to get to like where's right for the bigger portion of the player base, because that's like, it's those intangibles that mean more to how the game is played than you understand, than you imagine.
Yeah.
If difficulty's off for a little while for a couple dungeons, then you'll just bleed players and you'll not know why. Maybe you'll look at the data and find out why, and that's what like data and stuff is really good for, when people don't understand the intangibles. But then that's the thing where like there's too many of them World of Warcraft to even consider, because the game is so very big and so very complex.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I mean that like how many talents are
38 specs.
38 specs. So you've got you've got one tree per class and then one tree per spec, and you have to keep all of that in mind as you design balance and design different gameplay styles and how difficult they are to play, how much focus they require when you're in the dungeon. So you're sitting there putting together a dungeon boss and you're going, right, well, how hard is the game to play? How much focus? How much, how many interrupts do we have? How many interrupts am I allowed to put in here that feels okay? What if there's a group full of ranged? What do we do about that?
Basically, they overcomplicate for themselves for no reason. Got it.
Well, at least there'll be a tank, so they'll have an interrupt, so I guess we can only realistically have one interrupt every, 12, 14 seconds. Okay, well, then we apply player reaction time into that, so they have to cast something every 16 seconds, and then you bring a group full of melee, and they're like, this is really boring. You're like, fuck me. It's a hard-ass game to balance, because they've decided to make it so big and so complex.
Yeah, no, I was bound to be a hard game to make.
Oh, I don't think anyone would argue that WoW is a hard game to make. Of course it is, but fuck, man. Whew. But they're making it hard on themselves every fucking expansion. Yeah, anyways, that's the video. Holy fuck, man. I feel like just M+ and rating should not interact. Like, they should interact, but extremely minimally, minimalistically interact with each other, such as have sets for Mythic Plus that will make Mythic Plus better. You can use them as item level for rating, but the rating sets are just gonna be way better. Shit like that. Anyways, that's the video. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.